political rights. They acknowledge that every individual and every people has the inalienable right to freedom in all forms, physical, cultural, economic, and political, and shall be entitled to struggle by all available means against any infringement or abrogation of this right. And every oppressed individual or people has a legitimate claim to the support of other individual people in their struggle. More specifically, Islam makes it explicit that it is the right and duty of every Muslim to protest and strive within the limits of law against oppression, even if it involves challenging the highest authority of the state. The right to protest is linked to the right of every person to participate individually and collectively in the religious, social, and cultural political life of this community, and to establish institutions and agencies that are meant to enjoin what is right and forbid what is evil, or prevent what is wrong. Given that the Quran is central to the life to the majority of the Muslim world, what does it say? What does the Quran say about human rights specifically? I'm going to quote some extracts by an academic and scholar, a contemporary Muslim scholar known as Rifat Hassan, on this issue, and who has made a comparison between the Quran with the Magna Carta. I believe the Quran is the Magna Carta of human rights, and that a large part of its concern is to free human beings from the bondage of traditionalism, authoritarianism, religious, political, economic, or any other, tribalism, racism, sexism, or anything else that prohibits or inhibits humans from actualizing the Quranic vision of human destiny. I offer an account of the Quran's affirmation for fundamental human rights, which offers all human beings that they should possess, fundamental human rights which all human beings ought to possess, because they are so deeply rooted in our humanness that to deny or their denial is a violation tantamount to negation or degradation of what makes us who we are. From the perspective of the Quran, these rights come into existence when we did. They were created as we were by God in order that our human potential could be actualized. These rights not only provide us with an opportunity to develop our inner resources, but they hold before us the vision of God, of how God would like us to be. God wants us to strive for and to live for and to die for rights. Rights created by or given by God can't be abolished by any temporal ruler or human agency. Eternal and immutable, they ought to be exercised, since everything that God does is for a just purpose. So this is a premise underpinning a lot of what intrinsically makes a Muslim believe in God and human goodness. A Quranic injunction upholding the sanctity and absolute value of human life states, "Do not take any human being's life, which God has declared to be sacred, otherwise than in the pursuit of justice. This is what he has enjoined upon you, so that you may use your reason." The Quran points out that in essence the life of each individual is comparable to that of an entire community, and therefore should be treated with the utmost care. We ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person for murder or spreading mischief in the land, it would be as if he slew the whole people. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he'd saved the whole of the people. There are injunctions to the right of respect, the right to justice, the right to humanity, dignity, to privacy, all of these rights for which there are Quranic injunctions. I'll read you out a couple more in relation to justice. The Quran puts great emphasis on the right to seek justice and to do justice. O you who have attained faith, be ever steadfast in your devotion to God, bearing witness to the truth in all equity, and never let hatred of anyone lead you into sin for deviating from justice. Be just. This is the closest to being God conscious. O ye who believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah or God, even as against yourselves or your parents or your kin, and whether it be against rich or poor. For Allah can best protect you both. Follow not the lusts of your hearts, lest ye serve and distort justice, or decline to do justice. Verily Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. And two interesting concepts within Islamic jurisprudence on justice are the concepts of adl and ihsan. Both are enjoined and both are related to the idea of balance, but they're not identical. Adil is defined to be equal in Islam, to be equal, neither more or less. Explaining this means, in a court of justice, the claims of two parties must be considered evenly, without undue stress being laid upon one side or the other. Justice, introducing the balance in the form of scales that are evenly balanced. Adil is described as what is justice but the avoiding of excess. There should be neither too much nor too little, hence the use of scales as the emblems of justice. So that's where the just comes in. On the issue of treating minority communities, here we are. The greatest guarantee of personal freedom for a Muslim lies in the Quranic decree that no one other than God can limit human freedom, and the statement that judgment as to what is right and what is wrong rests with God. Since the principle of mutual consultation is mandatory, it is a Muslim's fundamental right as well as responsibility to participate in as many aspects of community life as possible. So it's one thing to be said to be persecuted and to complain about the system or the paradigm or the regime, but if we're not actively involved in trying to subvert that and just remain passive to the aggression, then really we've got no one to blame but ourselves for the continued oppression. So there is something to be said for activism. I think within all the major faiths, and certainly within Islam, there's no exception from doing that. However, how that then is interpreted in the broader sphere, depending on what side of the media you're on, could be seen to be provocative or victimhood. I think I'll leave it at that and let questions flow.
Thank you, Tashmeen. Girls, we've got 20 minutes almost left for your questions. So what I'm going to invite you to do first of all is to turn to the person next to you, have a buzz for 30 seconds, and I want each of you to have a question that you would like to ask.
That's a good way.
That's a pretty dense topic.
Yeah, no, it's like...
I don't want to be there.
Yeah, I know. Because we all gave the same message, but the theology behind it is, it's hard to... Yeah, exactly. That's why I focused more on the stories than the verse, because I could pull hundreds of verses, but I thought maybe they don't... The verses are easy, you know, it's the story that goes with it. It's like, I don't know if you saw that Save the Children ad, that they took a British girl and they showed her life falling apart over the space of a year.
Okay, thank you, girls.
Family, then a home and everything, and then they say that's what's happening in Syria, but because they show it to a British girl, you suddenly
Thank
say,
you.
oh, wow, that's... Yeah, it just has to be a white person.
So when you address your question, I'll bring the mic to you, and if you can just introduce yourself by giving your name to our panel, and then if you have a question that you're addressing more generally, you might just want to open it to the panel, but if it's to someone specific within our panel, if you could just ask that person answers. So who would like to begin? Hands up. I know you all have questions.
Hi, my name's Celine. Thank you all for coming as well. I guess our question from the four of us, we were just thinking, how much, since we come from more of like a secular society in Australia, how much of religion should we include in, I guess, in the policies, and like how much is too much or too little, I guess. That's for everyone.
Yeah, we are a secular society, and yet many of the policy makers come from particular faiths and traditions. I guess one of the points that has been made by each of the speakers, I think, is that all the major faith traditions of the world actually teach a lot of the same basic sort of truths. You know, what is truth? I think, in some way, we all address. And what is truth at base level is quite common. So a secular society, if it asks that same question, what is truth and what is good? What is the good? We'll go back to, from my point of view, and I think from all the faith traditions, will be what is kind and generous will be good. Okay? What is kind and generous will always be good. Then that doesn't solve every single question that can ever be asked, of course. There are complexities, even in the refugee sort of movement. We probably are all activists in terms of wanting much, much, much kinder policies towards asylum seekers and refugees. And we can't claim that, you know, we can just go ipso facto and then the answer comes down in every last detail. There'll be details that we have to dialogue about, worry about, eventually come to some decision about. And we mightn't all agree across society. But there'll be some things, I think, that we will, any decent society, secular or based on a faith tradition, will actually avoid. And they will be some of the things that Australia is doing right now, like punishing people who've sought protection. To punish somebody who seeks protection, to me, is like if a little kid ran into your house at home and said, there are bullies down the street and they're chasing me and I know they're going to hurt me, and then in your house you said, look, we don't want every kid in the street to be rushing in here looking for help, so get out of here, and probably gave them a little beating on the way to make certain they didn't come back. That's a bit of an analogy to what we're doing to asylum seekers. So anything that's simply where you simply set out to punish people or to deter this group of people so that other people won't do the same sort of thing because you don't like it, they're not good. I don't think in anybody's dialogue you could say those things are good. So whether it's a secular society or another, I think when we get people of goodwill sitting down and really talking about the situation, we would come to many of the same conclusions.
Can I just add to that, just really quickly? I mean, secular issue is one thing, and we talked about how much religion should go into informing policies and how we treat one another, if that's an example. I think Sister Bridget has maintained you don't have to be of a spiritual faith tradition to be a decent human being. And I don't believe that policies necessarily need to be couched in religious frameworks in order to be effective and meaningful. And we already have United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which this country is technically a signatory of. So it would really be about, you know, making the country accountable and ratifying all the different aspects of that convention, which takes, you know, I think support at the citizen level to really affect. But those charters ensure compassion, understanding, freedom, the protection. But we're not seeing them manifest. Now, whether that's a failure on the part of the religious values of leaders not acting up, or whether it's a failure on the humanity of our leadership, I think that's the greater question. And I don't think it's because our leaders are necessarily not religious enough. I think they're just not being decent enough, because they can pick and choose and turn that on. But I think if we impress upon them humanity and take faith out of the equation, that often can be more successful, because a large majority of the voting public don't have a faith tradition, and that's fine. But we all have a heart. Yeah.
Thanks, Tashmi.
Could I just say,
Please, Jill.
Very briefly, I think it's a really important question, and I think what is great that all you are studying here such issues and from different perspectives, and even as a secular society there are values, but the dominant value is really about profit and about keeping people out of the equation, so that, you know, the current government can claim success on asylum seekers. We've stopped the boats, but they've left people out of it. So there's different values. So different value perspectives are important, and for people to be able, for you in the future to be able to, and now to be able to using critical thinking to see what is happening and to ask the questions and to put pressure for change.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah. We have another question, please.
So I was just wondering, I'm Claudia, and with everything that's going on with asylum seekers coming to Australia and the government's approach to it all, we can try to change their opinions and try to convince them that obviously asylum seekers are people just like us and we should all be treated equally. But what exactly do you believe that the government should do, and how should they approach it?
Can you turn the projector? I want to show you a picture. What should they do is, again, look, now I'm answering this as myself. This is not a Jewish answer, because I think I'd say for all the faiths, none of our faiths have specific policy plans for the issues that are in the world today. But I want to draw your attention to a picture, which is a picture that always comes to my mind when I talk about this. The picture that you see here shows a vote that took place in 2012, and it shows, and it was the vote was on the floor of the Parliament, and they were trying to decide how long should people be allowed to be in detention for. So should they be in for 1 month, for 6 months, for a year? And on one side of the Parliament, you can see 148 MPs saying that asylum seekers should be in detention indefinitely, so as long as they need to be. On the other side, you see 2 MPs saying they shouldn't be in detention for more than a year. Now, the reason I'm showing you that photo is it made me think, what is that really what Australia thinks? Is like, if you were to do a poll of Australia, would 99% say asylum seekers should be in detention indefinitely, and only 1% say a year? Clearly, that's not the case. I'm not saying a majority would say it should be limited to a year, but it's clearly not the case. So what that tells me is that this is clearly a political problem to do with the nature of a two-party system, the nature of where the marginal seats are, the nature of that you need to win marginal seats to win elections, the nature of the people who live in marginal seats dictating certain policies that are not necessarily what the four of us would like to see. So in terms of how you change that, I think the people you need to speak to are the people that live in those marginal seats that do end up swaying elections, because that's how most policy in this country is decided. In terms of a solution, I don't have time to go through it in detail, but if you go to the website of the Refugee Council of Australia, they put out a very detailed 8-point plan before the last election, which I think would be very much in line with all the values that we spoke about, and they talked about things like increasing the quota, things like limits on detention, things like community detention. There was all sorts of plans there. I just don't have time to go through in detail, but if you go to the website, it's there, and I recommend reading it.
And could I just add, really important to ask and inquire why people are coming, because that is what is being ignored. It's just a blanket detention punishment, and for the long term, because people are going to continue coming increasingly for all sorts of reasons.
Maybe I could add, I think I've changed as I'm speaking to young people these days. I always try to make this point. I'm not asking you, and I could say this to you too, but to other young people, I'm not asking you to believe the things, or to take the side that I'm obviously taking. I'm obviously pro-asylum seekers, trying to say they have rights and we're not respecting them. But what I'm asking all young people, and all other people, if I happen to be talking to them, is try and find out the truth, okay? Because I believe that if most people knew the truth, most human beings, most people in our society knew the truth, in fact, we would have different and better policies. Okay, it's because people are being fed myths, misinformation, and sometimes lies. And that's why the government, and both sides, so I'm not being sort of siding with one party other than the other, both sides have done this. They're getting away with what I would call murder, and it's not far from murder. So we start off with the idea that there are 50 million people on the move somewhere in the world. That's what we're told. And then we get fed this sort of myth. Well, we can't take the whole 50 million. Well, of course Australia can't. Have we got any evidence whatsoever that 50 million people are converging on Australia? Or indeed, do we know absolutely certainly that not only 50 million people are not converging on Australia, but a very small number of people at any time in history have ever converged on Australia? So, you know, that's the difference between if you like to call it lies, but certainly misinterpretation and misinformation, and the truth. If we get to the truth, then a solution is found here. If we're dealing with misinformation, then a solution's over here, and it might be what the government now is doing. Okay?
Thank you to the members of our panel for that.
Hi, my name's Miranda. I was just wondering, do you think that the issue of asylum seekers being accepted into Australia is a generational issue, and whether our generation is capable of changing the current policies, like from personal experiences?
Okay, we'll have a go. Generational issue. I think if you take it from the demographic point of view that 1 in 3 Australians is now either got a parent or themselves from another background other than mainstream Australia, then the awareness of our diverse communities is much higher than it ever was. Certainly than, say, when I was growing up, which is several decades ago. And I think that awareness informs the fact between the more diverse societies that we have, between the availability of technology and globalisation that makes us instantly aware of our realities and the realities of like-minded Western young people in the UK or in Canada or in New Zealand or in Europe, for example. We can make like comparisons, and so we know what are the realities. And as Sister Bridget was saying, we can be passive recipients of what is fed to us, or we can be actively engaged in questioning what is fed to us. And I think this generation has got a far more discerning filter for what's fed to them, and understandably so, because the rhetoric is not enough. They don't just look at a headline on a local paper or watch the 7 o'clock news and that's all that you get for the reality. You have blogospheres, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have social media inundating you constantly with an alternative view. So I think, yeah, as a generation, you're a lot more questioning and you're a lot more, which can get exhausting sometimes, but it's fair enough. And I think we have to hold ourselves up as the existing generation of leaders to basically deal with that questioning and be able to respond to it honestly. And unfortunately, with our politicians, we don't get that level of honest engagement. So I'm kind of not sure if I've lost the traction of your question there, but certainly you're entitled to be more questioning. You have every right to be. Demographically, you're bound to, because you're no more just one monolithic particular ethnic entity. You're all so much more diverse than what Australia started off with. And I think it's, as much as technology keeps evolving and the more that we keep questioning the system, the better. Did I answer your question? Yeah.
We're at 9 minutes past 3. Is there one more question before we just move to wrapping up? Okay, ladies, what I'd invite you to do is turn your sheet of paper over, and on the back of it, I want you to write down 3 things that you have heard from our panel today that you are going to go home and you're going to talk to either people at the dinner table tonight or to your siblings or to a friend or on social media or somewhere that you have learnt that's new information today.
Oh, my turn.
Three things, you've got 1 minute, 3 things that you're going to take away.
We're going to throw in a dig there for Team Australia. You didn't mention that. Yeah. It's going down like a lead balloon, I can see.
Team sarcasm.
Yeah.
We have social service projects here at the schools.
The way to change what's going on.
But most Catholic schools have social justice.
Yeah, to choose every single song.
Yeah.
So, changing the vote,
Very informative in my own background, and I did this sometimes.
Yeah.
We still, in our schools,
just how you win elections is you appeal to the middle, and the middle in this area is on the right, on other areas the middle's on the left.
Okay.
The middle here is, so you've got to basically work your national seats together.
Thank you, girls. I'd just like to get a little smattering. This is great feedback for our speakers. If I bring the microphone near you, I'd just like you to just share one of the things that you've written down.
Hi, I'm Michaela, and I just wrote down that all faiths share the belief that we should be decent human beings by showing care and respect to those in need.
Very sweet.
Oh my God, I don't know which one to write. Be kind to the stranger. It was interesting to understand that all the most religions stem from a place of persecution, and how that influences our view on asylum seekers. Just like freedom and human life. Freedom and human life, and how it's all precious.
Thank you. I have a couple of girls who have generously offered to do the thank you to our panel of speakers, so I'll hand over to them.
So firstly, on behalf of all the Year 12s, thank you to all of you for sharing your experiences with us. I'm sure we'll all be able to take something away that helps us grow and understand this issue a lot better. To Ate, thank you very much for sharing your personal experience with us. Thank you. And to Jill, thank you for teaching us about Buddhism as well.
Hi, I'm Steph, and also I'd just like to say thank you so much for being here and for inspiring us, and really, irrespective of faith or our race or anything really, that it is a decent thing to be kind and compassionate to others. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Girls, we have 1 minute until the bell. There were a few people who didn't have the opportunity to sign in on the way in, so you need to ensure that you see Miss Burke and that you sign off on those sheets so that we know that you were here.
Well done.
Thank you, girls.
We're going to get the school traffic